Greetings, folks. Eeler here with what is, for me, a very special World of Warships replay. This is Astro Shooter, who introduced me to World of Warships back in August 2016. Astro gave me a lot of guidance and help when I first started playing the game, so it's maybe a little surprising and frankly a little embarrassing that I haven't featured one of his replays before, and I am very proud and honored to have him on the channel. Astro is sailing the Tier 8 Soviet gunboat destroyer Kiev for us today. He is top tier in a domination match on Haven with one Tier 8 aircraft carrier on each team. His ship build includes skills and upgrades which are mostly common or typical for Soviet gunboat destroyers, with one important observation. He has mounted the main battery modification 2 in slot 3. Now, this is an upgrade I generally discourage players take since it increases main battery reload times, and such a penalty often is detrimental, especially to a DPM-centric ship like the Kiev. However, in this case, Astro's commander does not have the skill points to take expert marksman without giving up IFHE or advanced firing training. And since the Soviet gunboats routinely change their course as well as the side they fire their guns from, keeping guns on target through this upgrade may very well outweigh the quarter-second increase in main battery reload time. Now, as for the game itself, you can probably tell from the video title that this is going to be an exceptionally close match. Astro plays the Kiev very well in the game, mostly working as the flanking long-range harasser, typical of Soviet gunboat destroyers. But that being said, there will be a few places where I'll offer some constructive feedback. Now, Astro is starting his engagement here on the east flank. This is a very popular place for gunboat destroyers to operate, including a place where I like to work because there's a fair amount of room to run around and do your thing, and there's plenty of space behind you to retreat if you need to get into concealment and maybe get out of trouble if the opponents push the flank. Now, for folks that have looked at the minimap, you can already tell there is trouble abrew with Astro's team. Neither of the spotting and capping destroyers, the Benson or the Sims, are attempting to contest either Bravo or Charlie, and the opposing team is going to take Bravo without being contested, and then shortly thereafter they're going to take Charlie without being contested. And this is going to play a major role or major influence in how things develop during the game. The fact that the opposing team is going to take caps very quickly. So my guess here on the Benson, and probably with the Sims as well, is that they're trying to get into positions to be able to torpedo the mass of opponents that are sort of clustered on the perimeter of the caps, but the Benson is in actually a terrible position to be able to try to torpedo effectively, and it looks like the Sims is probably in a similar position to basically not have much influence. Astro's got to be a little bit careful here. He does have an opposing Hipper targeting him. The German heavy cruisers and the Soviet cruisers have the shell ballistics and shell velocity to be able to hit gunboat destroyers like the Kiev with some reliability if they aim correctly there. In fact, he just did take a few shells from the opposing Hipper, and so he's got to be a little bit careful about how close he gets to that cruiser. Now, the Allied team has a Tirpitz in the Hotel 3 quadrant or India 3 quadrant, and that Tirpitz has just gone down, giving the opposing team first blood. So not only has Astro's team not attempted to take either Bravo or Charlie, or at least contest them, they've already lost one ship. Now, there is an Allied Hipper that is moving into the south part of Charlie, but he is wildly overextended. He's going to be in a crossfire between the battleships that are on the north side of Charlie, and then a couple of opposing destroyers, the Benson and the Lightning. In fact, the Allied Hipper is going to be sunk here very shortly by torpedoes from the Benson. Now, the Allied team is also, around the same time, is going to sink an opposing Akatsuki. In fact, it happened right there due to a detonation. So at least the Akatsuki, even though he got knocked out of the game early. At least he goes back to port having earned a few signals in the process. Now, Astro is, in my opinion, making a mistake here. A key aspect of the Soviet gunboat destroyers is their very high speed, and as many of my colleagues like to say, speed is armor. And I think he made a mistake here trying to throw off the fire from the Monarch, but frankly I think that just gave the Monarch an easier target to hit, and so I would have just kept up maximum speed. In fact, my own experience, I found that I have to sometimes resist the natural temptation to try to dodge shots when I'm sailing the Soviet gunboats, because I find that that often shortens my path and actually makes it easier for opponents to hit me. Or sometimes I'll sail into shells that otherwise would have fallen behind me if I had kept going in a straight line at max speed. Now, in the current situation, again, the opposing team has both Bravo and Charlie. They have more than almost a 300-point advantage here. Now, Astro is trying to feel some urgency to try to get a cap, and so he's moved over to the Charlie cap, but he doesn't really, this is really a bad position for him to be in. He's in range of 3 high DPM ships, and including the Hipper, the Lightning, and, well, to some extent the Atlanta, although the Atlanta trying to hit a Soviet gunboat destroyer at that range is pretty hard, but the Lightning and the Hipper definitely have the means to hit him. He needs to back off, and while he does have the right sense that the Allied team really needs to get a cap, he is not the right ship to try to do it, especially in the presence of the opposition that is at Charlie right now. He did send torpedoes into the smoke screen of the Lightning. I don't remember if he gets any hits on the ships. No, in fact, the Hipper has just creeped out of the smoke. My guess is that he may have had hydro running and did detect the torpedoes coming in from Astro. So looking at the overall game situation, the Allied team is down by 2 ships. They have a more than 400-point differential. They have a very large deficit here, and again, they are down 3 caps to 1. And again, Astro here is frankly just too close to the Hipper, who's going to be able to hit him very reliably at that range. And so Astro has 1 repair party. I'm sorry, 2 repair parties available to him, one of which will come up here in about 15 seconds, which he'll definitely need, as he's now been knocked down to 253 hit points. So the Allied team still has both of its destroyers. Well, they did until just now. They just lost the Benson. They still have the Sims. In fact, the Sims is going to survive quite late into the battle. But the Allied team basically is losing its grip on being able to get any sort of gains back. The opposing team has pushed into Charlie, is now sort of starting to do, well, it's not really a pincer because there's not really a strong opposing presence on the Bravo side. And so the right thing for the Allied team to do here is to pivot into Bravo so that they can at least start contesting a cap. There's the low health Hipper that should be a relatively easy target for somebody to take out. In fact, the New Orleans just finishes off the Hipper, and Astro is trying to glide across here to put some fire on the Atlanta. So we do have, at least we have a couple of ships now that have moved into Bravo and starting to contest it. Now the opposing team has pushed through the east flank and has now entered into Delta. We have a very healthy Lightning, and the Benson, in fact, the opposing Benson is also very healthy. Although the Lightning has now just taken a really major salvo from, I believe that was the Monarch, the Allied Monarch that has now pushed into the Bravo cap. Getting some cap resets here, which is good. Now, Astro here has only 1 repair party available to him, which will come up in a few seconds. And that's only going to get him back to maybe 4,000 hit points. But right now the Allied team is really in a desperate situation to try to get some gains and try to get some recovery here. So, fortunately, Astro is able to leverage the smoke screen that's been laid by the opposing destroyers to stay in some or at least he was in some concealment until it looks like one of the Allied destroyers has now come out of the smoke. So Astro should be peeling off here. Here's the Benson. Benson is also a very good gunboat, very good gunboat in close quarters because of the shell ballistics, but at longer ranges, he's going to have a lot of difficulty trying to hit Astro. We have been able to push off the Lightning, and in fact, the Lightning is almost dead now. Lightning is going to drop smoke again, and Astro is going to try to get a couple more shots in, try to get the Lightning down. Opposing Gneisenau is also pushed into the cap at Delta. Now the opposing team is really very few points from winning. They were at 950, but now Astro has sunk the Lightning, and so they've got a little bit of reprieve in terms of the point differential. And then the Atlanta also goes down. So now, and the Gneisenau opposing Gneisenau is pushing full steam ahead. And he is taken out by the North Carolina. So in fairly quick succession, Astro's team is now even the ship count. So this has been partially a reflection of Astro's team working effectively in some desperation to get opponents out of the way. But at the same time, the opposing team is trying too hard to push in on areas where they don't need to. And so effectively they are overextending and allowing themselves to be focused out here by Astro's team. Again, Astro is leveraging the smokescreen laid by the opposing destroyer to be able to fire on opponents but stay in concealment. He has now detected the opposing Benson. The Benson, I assume, is being lit up. Yeah, it is being lit up by the torpedo bombers from the Allied aircraft carrier. And then Astro's going to work very hard here to get the Benson down as quickly as he can, because the Benson is now a threat toward the opposing Monarch. I'm gonna get a few more salvos off here. I think it's gonna be slightly front. He's aiming slightly behind, and one more salvo out, but that's gonna miss. And then the Benson is gonna go into concealment here as the Monarch is about to go down. There goes the Monarch. We've lost the Benson now. Astro does something very cool here. He uses the targeter on the minimap to aim at the last known location of the Benson, or slightly ahead of it, and he does in fact get the Benson. So that was a pretty slick shot right at the end. So a very impressive execution there to get the Benson down. Again, ship count is even, although the opposing team still has a huge point advantage, and they still hold 2 caps. Now, we've now just sunk the Alabama, so the Allied team now has a 1-ship advantage, but again, they still have a huge point differential. The opposing Monarch here is actually quite low in health. Now, I also need to give a shout out, and I think Astro wanted to give a shout out to the Allied carrier, because the Allied carrier does a spectacular job in this game to help finish off opponents that keep points in the game, to help keep Astro's team in the game. Astro's having to peel off here against the Monarch. Now, this is very interesting that the Monarch is firing AP. The Royal Navy battleships are best known for firing HE, and here we have a Monarch that's firing AP against a destroyer. I would definitely have high explosive loaded here because as the Monarch, because he's only facing 2 destroyers and an aircraft carrier at this point. So in this kiting posture, Astro is able to effectively throw off these shots from the Monarch, and the opposing aircraft carrier is now going after the Monarch, excuse me. Now, one other thing I should point out here on the north side of the map is that the Allied Sims is going after the opposing carrier. In my mind, it's debatable. In fact, Astro just took a couple of shells there. but knots are here or run into the islands. But in fact, the Allied aircraft carrier finishes off the Monarch. So now it's a 3-on-1 situation. So they've done a spectacular job getting the ship count back and getting actually a ship advantage at this point. But they still have a large point differential, again, because the opposing team took caps much earlier in the game and therefore have a much larger point lead. Now, it could be back to my point on the Sims, which is on the north side of the map. It's debatable in my mind whether the Sims is making the right play here. Obviously, I don't know. We don't know his exact situation in terms of health, whatever, although he has now just been sunk by the opposing carrier. Whether it would have been better for him to go after the Enterprise, thinking that the opposing team was simply too far ahead on points and the only way to win would be to sink everybody, or whether he was getting greedy and trying to go after the carrier. My reaction initially when I watched the replay was that the Sims would have been better off trying to get a cap. And hopefully he would have had smoke available to him and he could smoke up in the cap and get the cap without being harassed by the aircraft carrier. But as it is, he went after the aircraft carrier and was sunk in the process. Now, the Allied aircraft carrier has gotten into Alpha and is capping and has held the points there. Astro has now slipped into Charlie, and that holds up all point advance that the opposing team is getting on these caps at 968 points. Now, Astro makes a very interesting choice here to open up on the Enterprise. I likely would have held my fire here unless I knew I was detected. Now, the opposing carrier is sending torpedoes to Astro in the cap. Again, for my regular viewers know, based on watching previous Kiev replays that I've had on the channel in the last few months, the torpedo bombers are generally not threats to these very high-speed gunboat destroyers, because often the destroyers are even faster than the torpedoes. And there, in fact, the opposing carrier was not able to get any torpedoes on Astro. Astro does secure the cap, but it's still, again, more than 200 point differential, although the Allied team now holds all 4 caps. They are gaining at a rate of 16 points every 6 seconds, and that's going to be 160 points every minute. And there are 2 minutes remaining. So this is going to be, so long as they can both survive, this is going to be a very close game. Now, I think it's at this point that Astro realizes the more important thing for him to do is stay alive. Here he is going to take some more damage from the opposing carrier. And so the more important thing for him to do is stay alive. And the first thing he probably should do is hitch up with the Lexington, because the Lexington is going to have dramatically better anti-air than Astro has. Even although Astro has probably lost a lot of his AA, even if he had all of his AA guns available to him, the Lexington's going to provide much better anti-air cover than Astro would be able to offer on himself. But then the other thing Astro should do, and he will do, is basically run. Maximize his distance from the opposing carrier so that he stays alive. That's the key thing that needs to happen at this point. And in fact, Astro at this point was like trying to scramble in his brain, think about, okay, given the remaining time and how many points we're getting every in the remaining time, is it going to be enough for us to win? And again, they're gaining at a rate of 16 points every 6 seconds or 160 points every minute. They have a little less than a minute left, and now they're within 50 points of winning, or at least taking the lead. And so they definitely have the time in order to win. You can see things are typed into chat. A couple of things. First is that his allies are telling him to run, which he definitely needs to do. In fact, I think that was the carrier that was telling him to run. But also you're seeing a lot of, compliments mentioned, or, what a good close game it was. And this definitely was. And both teams are expressing positivity about how things have gone. So it's going to wind down here with 20 seconds, but it is, in fact, Astro's team is going to win on points before the time expires. And this was an exceptionally close match, very well played by members of both teams, although there were some mistakes made on both sides as well. So Astro earns Dreadnought, which is, again, one of the things that I've personally experienced as a huge benefit in the Kiev with its repair party. The allied carrier and the opposing carrier both take top spot for XP on their respective teams. Astro comes in second for his team. And I certainly hope you enjoyed the replay and commentary. Please do leave your comments below. And as always, we hope to see you out there, and we wish you happy sailing.